Hi, welcome to Basic Parasta, and I'm Coach Vic. In honor of Spinal Cord Injury Month, we're going to continue my series of my life with a spinal cord injury, years 1 through 10. I'm going to go inside and wrangle up some breakfast for Coach Bob and I. I'm hungry and he's hungry. So stick around and watch the adventure. Gotta have eggs. Strawberries are awesome. Come on, Coach Bob. It's time to have some breakfast and a little morning talk. Okay, time for some breakfasto.
All right, so we chat this morning?
Yes.
All right.
Let's share the first 10 years of my spinal cord injury life.
Well, I gotta fix me a cup of coffee, you know why?
Because you need coffee.
No, because if you killed a Joe, you gotta make some more.
Oh, don't have all that.
That's what we have.
We're having eggs and strawberries. So where do I begin, Coach Bob?
Well, last time we were talking, I think we finished with, and you did some wheelchair racing too, and you go, yes I did. So how was your wheelchair racing career, and how soon thereafter did it start? And before you wheelchair raced, were you driving, were you dating, were you drinking, were you going crazy? Were you just living your life and existing? What was going on?
Well, I was living my life after 8 months of sitting around. Got home around the 1st of October, and I went straight from rehab to living life. I was in the turtle shell, so I really didn't go out much because I was new to being injured, doing nothing. I just lived my life. I still didn't have back surgery. Sent home with a broken back, trying to heal. They told me it would heal with a 38-degree kyphosis, and anyway.
Can I ask you a question? Because for people like me we don't really understand. So when you say, I mean, obviously we know you have a broken back, right? I mean, you broke your back, and the spinal column does this, and severs the nerve, and we know that. When you say you went home with a broken back, what does that mean? Is that like when you break a wrist, like they don't set the bone, they just send you home and go, welcome to crooked wrist world?
They sent me home in a body cast with a broken back. They said that it could heal, but it would heal with a curve.
Okay.
They didn't do any surgery on it because they didn't feel it. They didn't deem it necessary when I was in California. So I got home. I'm living my life the best I can. That was October, and then I would say probably it was January or February. I woke up one day. I was angry. I was tired. I was in pain, more pain than I've ever been in. I think the pain just kept getting different kind of pain levels, different kind of pain. Anyway, I woke up one morning in pain and angry and crying and screaming. And my parents were like, what's wrong? I go, I'm tired, I'm in pain, I'm tired of hurting. And they're finally like, well, then call the doctor. There's a doctor here in Miami, call the doctor.
What was his name?
His name was Dr. Barth Green, and he was the founder of the Miami Project down in Miami. It took me months to realize I could do this.
Yeah, Barth Green's a big deal. For those who don't know, he's a big deal.
So I ended up calling down there, had a consultation, had an x-ray, had a consultation. April 1st, I ended up going in with back surgery. So Dr. Barth Green and Dr. Nathan Lebwall performed the back surgery, the neurosurgeon and the orthopedic surgeon. Dr. Barth Green was disgusted with what he saw because he says if you would have had surgery way back when, you probably would be walking right now.
Okay, I want you to let that sink in a little bit. Coach Vic was told by Barth Green, if I would have been your doctor, you'd probably be walking right now.
Right. And although he did say your spinal cord it never got severed, so he thinks within those first 24 to 48 hours, maybe even a few days, around that time frame, I probably would be walking again.
Now, the question is, why did they not do surgery in California?
They did not do surgery because I had a ruptured spleens, they removed my spleen, I had a punctured lung. So they felt those were more life-threatening and they wanted to get those under control before they would do back surgery.
So they were trying to save your life.
Right.
And Dr. Green said, you were young, you were strong, I would have looked at your demographic, and it would have been worth the risk. He felt that the gain outweighed the risk. And so he would have been willing to put Coach Vic on the table whereas the other doctor was more conservative in their approach, and this is where we are.
Right. So this is where I am. I'm home. So I'm living my life. I'm just making the best of it. So I had the surgery. I went back to rehab at Miami-Jackson Hospital for another month, just because rehab required me for surgery, and I learned some more life skills there. So I got back. So that was like April. Then
So
April.
the first year was just crazy.
Crazy. So April, May, June, I'm recovering from the back surgery, trying to figure out, well, where am I going to go with my life? What am I going to do? So then all of a sudden, things just changed. Like I call it the month of August, everything changed. I was involved with vocational rehab, so I started driving. I went through their little driving program. I got a car, a 1990 Buick Regal. I got a job at a local restaurant, answering phones for takeout and a cashier. And I started back to college to finish up my 2-year degree. And I started wheelchair racing. All that started in the month of August. So I was pretty busy, and being busy was great.
All right, now Coach Vic, I want to give a shout out to somebody. Now this guy barely knows me, and I barely know him. I mean, we've seen each other, I think, twice, maybe 3 times in my lifetime. But there are few people in this world that I look back through Coach Vic's life and I go, that person was a staple. They were a stronghold in Coach Vic's life. And this was a young man at the time. Now he's older like us. Of course, we all grow old. But he was there for Coach Vic. He was there to help her raise, to encourage her, to push her to be more. So Coach Vic, who would you like maybe to say thank you to this morning?
Well, I'm glad you said that. That young man, his name is Daryl, and he was there from day one when I got hurt. He was a high school friend, all through my high school years. We ran track and cross country together. When I got hurt, he was there. And then when I started wheelchair racing, he was there almost for every race I did. He was there to help. He was my best buddy. He
was your cheering section.
He was like...
Without him, who knows what, and I'm going to say this, and this is probably a pretty bold statement. I don't know where Coach Vic would have ended up without the cheering squad, without someone there for her. So, in fact, when I met Coach Vic, of all the people that probably gave me what I used to call the stinky eye, where they look at you like, yeah, are you really going to take care of her? He probably looked at me up and down a lot harder than anyone else, and I thank him for that. I appreciate it, because someone, apart from her family, you always have family that does that. We all need a friend. We need someone out there who really cares about us.
And he was there. He was a great friend, and I totally appreciate everything he did for me. He saw me at my best. He saw me at my worst. When it comes to paralyzed things, he saw everything.
But he'll always be a part of your life,
right?
Because he should be. He earned it. The old-fashioned way. Again, friendships take work. He earned it.
Yes,
So kudos to you, bro.
Kudos to you, Daryl. I raced for about a year. Once I got the racing chair, it was donated to me through Sport Aid. Anyway, I raced for almost every. It had to be racing season from August, for that year, and I raced almost every weekend. Mostly 10Ks. That was the race of the time, and so I did mostly 10Ks. Very few 5Ks, because I thought 5K was too short a race. And then I ended up doing 1 marathon in that time, the Miami-Dade Marathon. I actually ran the Orange Bowl Marathon, which they changed the names to Miami-Dade Marathon. And then years later, when I got into hand cycling, I hand cycled that marathon. So I did the Miami Marathon, running, wheelchair racing, and hand cycle, which is pretty cool.
And you won 2 of those 3.
I won almost all of them. But one of them was money. The Heart Run, I won $1,000. And me and another young lady in a wheelchair, we fought for that race, and I won that race.
Okay, so you get through the racing thing. You're doing your racing. A year, you rolls into 2 years. And you're looking at jobs and life.
Jobs, and I ended up with my college. I ended up getting my college degree. I went back to my old university, St. Thomas University. I went back there to finish my degree. It was weird going back to college in a wheelchair. My first experience, the first day back, the classroom for one of my classes. The classroom was upstairs in this building, which was not ADA accessible. So I go and I'm sitting by the stairs, and I couldn't get upstairs. So I'm like, what do I do? So some of the young students offered to carry me upstairs. I'm like, well, we can do this, but this is going to be 3 days a week. So the professor got wind of it, and he's like, so immediately they took the classroom and changed it to the library, which was upstairs. They had an elevator. They didn't appear to be very happy, but they did accommodate me. But it was also weird going back to my old university that I ran at when I had a scholarship. Anyway, I got my degree finally. Plenty of jobs through those years. My first 10 years, I had a lot of jobs. Most of my jobs were phone jobs, working on the phone, because I was a waitress before I got hurt, and I actually applied for 2 waitress jobs in a wheelchair. People thought I was crazy. Then I'm like, if I can't have a wheelchair, the waitress job, how about a hostess job? They didn't hire me. I'm like, I can carry drinks on my lap. They didn't. I was bold. I can't believe I actually did that, but I did.
Okay, so you were talking about just living. So where did you live in that first 5 to 10 years? How'd that work out? I mean, I guess when you went home initially, you moved in with mom and dad. Then all of a sudden,
yes. I moved home right back home with mom and dad in my old bedroom.
how'd that feel?
It was humbling. Here I am living with mom and dad, being taken care of by mom and dad. And I appreciate everything they did for me. They did help me out a lot. They did push me. They weren't there to hold my hand every step of the way. They did make sure I was independent, learn how to do things on my own, and I did. So every new transfer, hey dad, come watch me so I don't fall. The ground looked really far. First time I fell, actually, I was in the driveway somewhere and just hit a rock, and I fell right on my hands and knees. And then I started laughing because I'm like, that really wasn't that far down. Then I realized that it wasn't that fearful to fall after that. But living life was different, hard. But anyway, after a couple years, I ended up moving out.
And where did you move to?
Weston, Florida, with a friend. And lived there for about a year. Then I moved into another place with another friend. So I just kept moving around a little bit. Forgot my coffee. Living on my own was good. I was all independent. Nothing was accessible. It was just apartments. You move into an apartment and you just deal with it. Back in those younger years, of course, you're young and you can move a lot easier, but I didn't have any problem living in a place that was not accessible.
I know you lived in like a little 1-bedroom efficiency that was kind of, shall we say, a little dicey.
So after a few years, I ended up renting my own place, a little house on the back of a big house. Anyway, I lived there for almost 2 years, and the reason why I left, like just shy of 2 years, is because I was at work. I was actually a substitute teacher for a couple of years. The next year, I was actually a sub for a guidance counselor, so I got to be an interim guidance counselor for a year, and that was a really nice job. I was at my work, got a phone call at 1 o'clock in the afternoon from my landlord saying your house just got robbed. I'm like, what? I said some pretty ugly words. I left my job, went home. They had broken in my bedroom window and they stole everything. They stole my computer that I had just bought. I still had $1,000 left on it.
Not that you had bought, that you had charged.
Charged, and I had to go to the store and pay it off. So they stole my computer, my printer, my little boom boxes. We had it back in the day, little portable stereos, VCR, my TV. So I sat there in my little efficiency. The cops came and they fingerprinted everything, powder everywhere. So I just sat there. What do I do? I went to bed that night laying in my efficiency knowing it was robbed. It was broken into. So about a month later, I ended up moving out with my brother. That lasted for about a year. So between my jobs and relationships and life, I decided one day.
So Coach Vic, now I've been married to you for 20 years, but I know that you dated at least one fella in 10 years. I know you did. I know how you dating me was. But how was just dating, generally speaking, from wheelchair, from your perspective? I'll carry your coffee for you.
Let me roll over there with it. Coffee. You can't have breakfast without coffee. Dating was awkward because you have to deal with everything and explain everything to people, and you don't want bad things to happen. And I didn't like dating. As much as I wanted to date, I didn't like dating.
Obviously, we've been together a long time, and I hear all the questions that people ask you, about this and that and the other. People can, I'm going to tell you, man, it's weird to me because people will ask you very personal questions.
I heard everything.
I know, and it just is, it's mind-boggling to me that people will just go out of the blue. I'm like, this is my wife you're talking to. What are you doing? My question is this. When you're dating and you're in a wheelchair, did you have to explain everything every time?
No.
No? Were there times you just said, I'm not talking about it?
Sometimes I just didn't talk about things.
Fair
Did
enough.
I explain my whole life to everybody? No. Did I explain my life to some people every now and then? Yes. Did I like it? No.
Okay.
So I really didn't like, I hated the fact that you had all that extra stuff to have to worry about dating.
Because it can be awkward dating
And
anyway,
those people
right?
who say it's all easy, it's not that easy. Back then, I thought it was easy, and I was like, oh, I'm going to tell everybody everything because I'm going to be this independent. Let me tell you about everything. Be open-minded. Looking back at it now, if I had to advise anybody on how to do it, I wouldn't get so personal with everything all the time. I wouldn't focus on all that stuff. I mean, I know things have to be brought up eventually, but I wouldn't give the rundown on day one. Anyway, you got me in an awkward spot there, Coach Bob.
No. Look. The thing is, what I want people to understand, because you know what, there may be somebody out there that's getting ready to date someone in a wheelchair, and so not only is this good for someone that's in a wheelchair that might be faced with these things, but it's also good for a guy like me, because I remember asking Coach Vic, what should I not do? I didn't know if I stand there and talk to her, am I being rude looking down at her? If I kneel down, am I being condescending like she's a child? If I touch her leg or touch her wheelchair, because you know when you kneel down, if you're like me, you'll fall over. So, you know, the first time I met Coach Vic, I walk into a place. Now, I'm not going to get in it because that's for another story. But basically, I go in, I see her, and she's beautiful. She's sitting there, and she was easy to recognize.
Because I'm the only one
in a wheelchair, right?
Yeah.
So I walk in there, I see this beautiful blonde lady, and I kneel down. That's the first thing I do. I want to look her eye to eye. I don't know what to do. I feel a little awkward, not because of the wheelchair, but because I'm wondering, is my body language, is everything that I do going to be right? So I knelt down and I put my hand on the frame of her wheelchair to keep me from falling. That was, oddly enough, that was one of the things
that you weren't sure about?
That I wasn't sure about, but oddly enough, that was the thing that made her like me, was the fact that I seemed so comfortable and was willing to get right down.
Now, I have this thing, and I'm sure other people in wheelchairs probably feel the same way. When people touch your chair, it is your body. It's you don't like people touching your chair. But when someone who you like touches your chair, it was like, ooh, he touched my chair. So when he came in and knelt down and put his hand on my frame, it was like, ooh, he touched my chair. It was pretty cool, but there are people out there who've touched it. I'm like, get your hands off. Yeah, I get the heebie-jeebies. He's on my chair. Or
touching my chair.
He or she is touching me, he's touching me, it's touching my chair. Or if they take their foot, and when I play footsies with my casters, I'm like, get your foot off my casters. There's people I don't mind, but there are people who I really cringe when they did it.
So there's professional life, personal life, dating. How was driving? I mean, you know, so you get your car, obviously you took a little class. For you, now I think you said it was a little difficult for you, but for your twin sister, it wasn't too bad?
Yeah, I was always the chicken to drive, even before I got hurt. It was like 19 years old, so I got my license because I was a chicken. I was told to go through, through their organization called Vocational Rehabilitation, and they help pay for things. And so I got accepted. Anyway, I went through the program where you drive so many hours. Anyway, I passed the test finally. I passed. But I still went home and drove around my neighborhood for like a week, just my neighborhood, because I was just scared to go on the main road. And then my sister's like, let me drive the car. So she gets in and just drives it like it's no big deal, but although she can walk and all that. But she had no problem with the hand controls. I'm like, get out of here. Learning how to put the wheelchair in and out of the car. I used to take my old car, my Honda Civic, practice transferring. It would take like 10 minutes to get that chair apart and in the car. Anyway, when I started driving, it was down to 4 minutes. It was a 4-minute process to get to, by the time you transfer, take the wheels off and put the wheels in. And I hated putting gas in my car. Yes, because I had to get out, take it apart, put the gas in, make sure you park far enough from the gas pump to make sure you get in, because I did that once. I had to get back in the car, move the car, get back out of the car. And here's one thing I did was really bad. I was traveling, going down the turnpike, and so I would stop and get gas and use the restroom and get a snack at the same time. I normally would do 2 ins and outs of my car, but this one particular day, I pull up at the gas station, I'm gonna run to the service plaza and use the restroom and get my snack. I leave the car at the gas pump. About 30 minutes later, I show up with a Coke and a pizza in my lap, rolling across the parking lot. People are in line waiting to use the pump. And I go to get my car, I hear mumbling and grumbling going on.
So then you were talking about Dr. Bartharine, and you ended up though, after seeing him, he had given you this devastating news, you'd walked, and And then he was like, hey, your little crooked spine is going to be a little more crooked. And so he ended up doing what? They ended up doing what?
I ended up having my back surgery. They fused T6 and 7 and 8 together, using part of my hip bone and a part of my rib bone. And then rods were put in my back from like T4 to T12. I had rods put in my back. I carried them around with me. I'll tell you why. So I had rods in my back. About 3 years later, and they weren't great. I mean, they kept you straight up. It really didn't hinder me in movement and all that. I really didn't have a problem with all that. So about 3 years later, I started feeling a muscle cramp in my left side. Every time I would reach out my left arm, I would get this big old spasm in my back, a muscle cramp. As I was working a job as a social director at a rehab center, and I mostly work with the older population, but I actually would push them around in my wheelchair. Through that season of my time, I noticed my back hurting. After massage therapies and cortisone shots, I finally went back to my doctor, Dr. Barth Green. I said, listen, my back is hurting. So, okay, we'll take out your rods. So I went into surgery back in 1993, and I remember them telling me I laid on the bed, operating table, and as I lay there, they could see the rod sticking out of my back. They could actually see
pushing up through the skin.
Yeah, they could see that.
The skin.
Yes. So they went in there, took out the rods, and they said, yes, one of the pins of the rod attached to a muscle. So every time I moved, that muscle would grab. So then anyway, I had surgery, and I said, I wanted to keep some metal. So these two pieces right here, those were in my back. I carry these around since 1993. I've had these in my key.
30 years.
Has it been that long?
03, 13, almost 30 years.
Can you believe that? I've been carrying these around that long. And anyway, I had those taken out. 3 weeks later, I went to do the Miss Florida wheelchair pageant.
How'd that go?
It was, oh my goodness, because I already signed up for it before my back surgery. I wanted to be a Miss America so bad as a little girl. It'd be so much fun. So then the opportunity came. Some girl told me, you should be in a Miss Wheelchair Florida pageant, because it's not about beauty, it's about your personality. I'm like, well, I want to be about beauty, not just personality. Anyway, I applied, I joined, I went there. My sister was my companion because they wanted you to have a companion. And I talked about a humiliating experience. It was awful. It was my independent years. They ask you, they have this little sit down area where you talk about all these scenarios. What would you do if this happened and this happened? And what they want you to say is, I will ask for help. So they asked me, what would you do if you're in a hotel room and you can't reach something and you can't do something? Or I'll take the tools they have and I'll fix something, and all the answers they didn't want to hear.
They wanted, I would advocate with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Talk about advocating. Here's my advocate story, and this is how naive I was. So you go to the pageant and you're supposed to be there to advocate about disabilities. Okay, fair enough.
Did you know that?
No. So I'm writing my speeches at home, figure out how to write 2 speeches. How would you change the world? One of them, and how is your life about being disabled or something. Friday night speech was more casual. The pageant speech, what are you going to advocate for? So my whole life, and I really didn't know what the word advocate meant, so I'm in the dictionary looking up the word advocate. So here I am doing my speech. So I'm like number 7 to do my speech. So I hear girl 1 and girl 2. And girl 3. By then, I'm in the backstage cringing.
Ruh-roh.
I'm like, I want to leave. I want to get out of here. I don't even want to do the pageant.
I want to run.
No, so now it's my turn to go do my speech on the stage. In the dress that I really didn't like. In the makeup that looked really bad. Hi, as a cross-country and track runner through my high school years and my college years, I want to advocate for all the middle school students to exercise and to do sports at school. Exercise and being healthy is very important.
Which is great.
So I advocated on the health.
For what you were passionate about, not the wheelchair.
Right, and I didn't say one word about the wheelchair. Nothing.
Well, shame on you.
Let's just say I did not make the top 5 contestants. So that was the experience on the Miss America Wheelchair Florida pageant.
By the way, also Coach Vic, she was a calendar girl. She was a calendar girl.
No, don't even say that.
Oh, boy, no.
No.
Coach Vic was a calendar girl.
No.
She was.
It was awful.
It was wonderful.
No.
She was beautiful. She was wearing a swimsuit and had on dark sunglasses. She was a hottie.
The one picture I told them not to use was the picture they used.
Calendar girl. Fast forward there, beauty queen. And she did like you did a magazine, not a
I
magazine.
did one modeling job. Actually, I did Eddie Bauer, and the second one I did, camper trailer. They carried me up the steps to the RV camper trailer to do your hair and makeup. And I was like, wow, look at the hair and makeup. I'm like, you need to come to my house and do this every day, because it was really fun and really cool. But I lost my modesty because they're like changing these clothes. I'm like, here? So right there in the room, I'm just in front of men and women. I'm just like changing my clothes for their clothes. I'm like, this is the weirdest thing ever. On South Beach, I'd got this model on South Beach, but I never saw the pictures.
They were probably just pictures of you changing your clothes.
No. Anyway, that was kind of fun doing that, but that was my only 2 modeling experiences.
Fast forward, one day you go, man, the pace of South Florida and the insanity of South Florida, I think I've had enough of. I've got to get out of here because I'm worried about my survival down here.
Yes.
And not just, I mean, just everything from relationships to emotions to paralysis to just life. It was at a breakneck speed, and you were like, man, I got to get out of here. So you decide, I'm leaving. Now, the first time you left, you went to Vegas and you got hurt. So was there fear associated with you leaving? Were you like, man, here I go again? Am I going to, is this a mistake? Or were you afraid, or were you like, man, I'm just going to do it. Breakneck speed, I am doing it. I don't care. I'm out of here. Where were you?
Well, I was at a point in my life where life was just going crazy. Working at the Miami Beach Police Department now at this time, learning to be a dispatcher, 911 call taker. I didn't like having to commute an hour to Miami each way 5 days a week, and then I was going to be on the midnight shift. Between that and just life in general, I'm like, I need to get out of South Florida. I need a change, a big change, like right now. So I called my best friend up. I'm coming to your house to live with you. I didn't even ask her. So build a ramp at your front porch. I'll be there in 2 weeks.
And she lived in a 2-story townhouse.
Yes, and 2 weeks later, I was living in her townhouse. And she had a job out of her house. She owned her own business. And I worked for her for a little while, crawling up the stairs and crawling down the stairs for about a year as a part-time job. So I was excited, moved in, got unpacked, and the pace of Tallahassee is a lot slower than Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that's for sure. And I moved here and I'm like, well, what do I do now? All my friends aren't there and my family's not here. So I actually got kind of homesick for like a week. After like a week, I called my dad up and said, Dad, I'm moving back. He's like, no, you're not. Give it 2 weeks. Give it 2 weeks, and if you feel that way still, then you can move back. Then I ended up staying, and I had found a job. For all you people out there who have spinal cord injuries or who are paralyzed, you probably know of the organization called the Center for Independent Living as an independent living specialist.
And you did a lot of good.
And I did.
You helped a lot of people.
I did. I went to a lot of homes with a lot of young people who were, my focus was spinal cord injuries. And I actually worked with some blind people. I took 2 blind people to go to a meeting. I left my folder in the trunk, so the one blind friend got out to get the folder out of the trunk, and then he was coming back to my car, and I go, don't go to the right because you're going to fall in the ditch. Of course, he falls in the ditch. So the other blind girl in my car with her dog had to get out and help him up. And I'm in my car, and I can't even get, no, my wheelchair was in the trunk also, so I couldn't even get out. So I'm yelling verbal cues for them to get back in my car. And another time I had to go to a meeting. I'm parked in rocks. So I get out, and then my co-workers getting my chair out of the desk that they did. They get my chair out of the trunk, put my chair together, and I'm trying to tell them how to do it. Then I get out, we go roll through the rocks, and I fall because a big rock or something, I fall. So I got a blind co-worker
trying to pick you up,
pick me up, and put me in a wheelchair. So I worked for them, and I lived with my roommate for 6 months because she had gotten engaged. I'm like, there's no way I'm living with her because they're gonna get married. So within 2 months, I found me a townhouse, and I bought it. 2-bedroom, 2-bath townhouse.
So you're a success.
So I
You've
felt
got a
very
house,
successful.
you got a car, you got a job.
Yep.
You're on your own, you're doing it.
Yeah. So by the time I had my townhouse, I was 32 years old, and I lived there for almost 3 years. And then of November of 1999 my next 10 years begins. And that's another story.
Altogether.
He is part of that story, just a little piece of that story. So my first 10 years was all about living my life in a wheelchair and living my life as a young adult, trying to figure out who I am and what I'm going to do in life. My next 10 is a completely different story.
Before we get off on where we're going with this, because I know we finished this decade. I saw a question in an email that Coach Vic had, and she asked me how she should respond to it. And so I'm going to ask her, I'm going to put her on the spot right here. So Coach Vic, how much money did you get out of that lawsuit? And that's exactly how it was phrased in the email. So Coach Vic, how was that big payday?
I didn't get a big payday.
Did you even file a lawsuit?
No, because I was advised that I would not win anything. I was advised on every scenario that I could have filed for, I would have lost. And I was 23 years old, so I didn't know any different. I had this 7-year window. I was told you can sue. I never did, partly because they asked me to fly out to California to testify against the girl that hit me. But I'm like, I don't want to see her face. I already know her name. I don't want to see what she looks like, so I don't want that memory in me. I didn't want to fly by myself, or I was newly injured, didn't want to deal with all the flying and all the court. But I did get a trust fund through the citizens of Miami Beach Police, because my dad was a police officer for Miami Beach Police at the time when I got hurt. And the community got together and they did set up a trust fund for me. So I did get some money through them, which helped me for
that trust fund helped you for a few years, helped you get a car.
Helped me get a car.
And kind of get on your feet.
And get on my feet and just get settled.
But it wasn't like a big 6-figure thing.
No, it was not
we're talking low figures. But it was enough to get her a car.
But I appreciate what the city of Miami Beach did, because they were very helpful and it did help a lot.
But I just, being I know you've been asked that question multiple times.
People ask me that a lot.
They're like, well, I guess you got a big payday. And no, she never got a big payday.
And I could have sued the car company.
You could have done a lot of things.
I could have done a lot, but
hindsight's always 20/20, and it's one of those things where I just wanted to, the elephant that is often in the room is the one that we don't address. But being I've seen that email, she's like, I don't know how to respond to this. I don't know if I should respond to this. How do I respond to that? And she just delete. And I'm like, no, I think you need to address it, because people are going to keep asking you. You might as well make it public. She didn't get a dime.
But with all that being said, I made it on my own.
But the main thing is that when she met me, I got some student debt out of it.
Yeah, student loans lasted for a while. Yeah, I still had student loans, but meeting Coach Bob is another whole story. So don't forget, like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'm really trying to get my subscribers up. So remember, you can if you try, and you can't if you cry. And I ain't crying. And I'll talk to you soon. Now go enjoy a cup of coffee.